Okay, can you hear me now? I face some technical difficulties. Okay, okay. Is my screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Um in today's class, I would like you to take a notebook also. So we'll be discussing some equations and all. So I would like you to take a notebook also. Uh, so in the last class, we were discussing about different types of suspension. So we discussed about McPherson structure suspension. Then we discussed about short swing arm suspension and long swing arm suspension used in motorcycles. Then we discussed about the double wishbone transverse suspension, and we discussed about trailing arm suspension. So these were the topics we discussed earlier, and today uh, we are going to study about the last type of suspension, that is the telescopic suspension. So we know that telescopic suspension we are seeing in the front wheel or the front drive of the vehicle. We are mounting it in the front of the vehicle, especially in motorcycles. We have seen telescopic suspension in motorcycles. Even it is used in cars and all. So it contains basically two elements. There will be a coil spring inside and a hydraulic fluid inside. So basically two elements. There will be a coil spring inside and also a hydraulic fluid inside. So you can see here there is something called a piston or a valve here that is shown here. There is a tube here, and this is the cylinder, and there is a sufficient valve B here. Okay, so what happens is that when load comes from the bottom of the telescopic suspension, the suspension assembly, that means this cylinder that is shown here, this is another cylinder, this cylinder compresses inside. So once it compresses, there will be hydraulic fluid present above valve B shown in this figure. Okay, there will be hydraulic fluid uh, present over the valve B shown here, and from this B, the hydraulic fluid is compressed back into the on top of the valve A. So it will come over here. Okay, that is how the hydraulic fluid passes through, and there will also be a coil spring here. Okay, there will be a spring that will be mounted over this axle and this piston, and then this spring gets compressed under the action of B. So due to that action of B, only a small amount of fluid, hydraulic fluid, can enter here, while due to the hydraulic action that is happening here, this valve A is compressed against the spring force that is provided, thereby producing a compressive force of this spring and cushioning the force incoming at valve B or to this cylinder. So this force is transmitted to the hydraulic fluid, and this hydraulic fluid exerts a force onto the valve A, thereby even moving towards the top of valve A. Only a small portion moves, while the rest is present here itself to provide hydraulic fluid power or the hydraulic power to valve A, compressing it against the spring and providing the cushioning effect. So that is how it works. And to return to its original position, the uh, the spring then expands, thereby expanding the valve A, which produces again a hydraulic power to valve B. It produces a hydraulic power that is transferred to valve B, and this hydraulic power then expands the arm. Okay, expands. So it is in the shape of a telescope. So a telescope has multiple tubes incoming from a single tube, and in the same way, it is this suspension is mounted, and hence it is known as telescopic suspension. So this is how it looks. So in a front wheel of a in a front wheel of a motorcycle, you can see the front suspension in the shape of a telescope. So this spring that is shown here can be mounted inside. Okay, it may not be visible. Sometimes it is visible. In most cases, it is covered by another tube, which will be in bigger diameter than this tube that is shown here. And during compressive effect, this then compresses and then forms the cushioning effect inside the vehicle. So basically there are two types of telescopic suspension. So you can see, so these are the parts here. So one part is the fixed fork, while the other is known as the active fork. Okay, one is known as the fixed fork and other is known as the active fork. Now the axle is present over here. So this is the axle, and here is where the front wheel comes into contact. The front wheel comes into contact here. Okay, the front wheel is mounted over this axle, and the direction of travel is in this direction. So when the tire goes into an uneven road or a dip or a hump, this wheel is extended or retracted back. So like this it will travel. Inside there will be a coil spring mounted as shown here. So you can see here there is both hydraulic fluid and also a coil spring mounted here. So this hydraulic fluid only leaks a portion of the hydraulic fluid only reaches this portion. Okay, but the whole portion is dependent upon the action of this piston. So this is here, it is a double acting piston. So it acts in this direction and also in this direction. So when suspension occurs, this compresses, and on compression, this is a tube. So you can see a bigger diameter tube, and this is a smaller diameter tube here, which mounts the spring. So once the compressive force or the force from the ground is exerted on this rod, this telescopic arm compresses the spring that is shown here. This is called this fork spring, and the hydraulic fluid is then transferred here a little, and the hydraulic power generated here compresses the piston against the coil spring force, and once this force from the tire is removed, the spring then expands and returns the telescopic suspension to its original position. So here is that hydraulic chamber, so where the hydraulic fluid is stored, and these are triple trees, so that you don't have to look. Just look at the fixed fork, active fork, and axle. And based on that, there are two types of suspension. So here, the fixed fork is this one, and the active fork is here. The telescopic arm is the active fork, but here the the other part of the telescopic arm is the compressing member or the active fork. Okay, and so if it is in this direction, it is known as upright telescopic suspension, and if it's in this manner, it is known as inverted telescopic suspension. But it's just inverted, just the opposite is happening here. Okay, this is the most commonly used upright type of suspension, are the most commonly used telescopic suspension. Okay, in the next topic, we are going to study about various body roll stability. So first we have to understand what is a roll. So for that, I will show you two videos. Okay, to understand body roll, if a vehicle is moving in sufficient direction, so you can see how the body is tending to move outside. Okay, so this is how a vehicle when swerving a curve shows. Okay, so what happens here is that due to the centripetal force that is generated, the vehicle always tends to move outside. So what is centripetal force? When we are attaching a stone on a spring and we are rotating it in a circular axis, and then once you release it, it will go in tangential direction from the direction of or the rotational circle that is formed. So it will go in the tangential direction. In the same manner, a centripetal force is going here and the car can move to this direction. So that is what a centripetal force is. Now what is centrifugal force? So centrifugal force is created so that the vehicle then tumbles over or rolls over in this direction. So it rolls over in this direction. So what happens during rolling? So in a rolling condition, if you look here, the more weight is occurring at this wheel, that is at the outer wheel. So here, when the vehicle is turning to the left, it is turning to the left, and when turning to the left, the front wheel and the rear wheel that is at the inner wheels that are present in the inner of the curve are raised up. So you can see it is raised up while the outer wheels are pressed against the ground. So it is pressed there. The suspension are completely in action over this condition. And in the next condition, once the speed is much more greater, this wheels lifts up and then rotates the car in this direction. So when you are looking at it like this, there will be an anti-clockwise movement of rolling during this type of swerving. That is what is happening here. So basically what is happening is that there is a center of gravity present in the vehicle. So where is the center of gravity? It is not exactly present at the center of the vehicle, but rather the weight is concentrated where the engine is present inside the car. So it is present basically where the engine and gearbox assembly is present inside the car. So that is where the weight is concentrated, and that point is known as center of gravity. So here in a vehicle, the center of gravity is much more closer here to a that is much more in the front of the driver here, and when it takes a curve, the center of gravity is extended or the weight is extended to this side. So that is what is happening. So when the weight is extended to this side, the wheels get suspended in this manner, and these wheels are lighter here. In the inner curve, the wheels are lighter, and when swerving, due to this weight shift, the vehicle is free to rotate in this direction. That is what is happening in a curve. So you can see here. So this vehicle is moving and taking a curve here. So you can see how it lifts off from the ground. So it is lifting off because of this change in center of gravity. Okay. On another video also. So you can see here the truck, how it is swerving and then it is rolling over. So this is because the speed at that curve is much greater and the shift of center of gravity or the shift of weight is observed here. And once the weight is shifted, the inner wheels are lighter to rotate in particular direction. So this is what is known as body roll. Okay. We can see another example also. So Okay, if you look here, the vehicle is incoming and it is taking a roll. So here also it is lifted up and then it rolled once. Okay, you can see that the rolling action, and it is then turned in an upright position. It may or may not be in an upright position once it lands. So that is how body rolling occurs. So once the speed increases than the desired value, then there will be a chance of body roll occurring. So I want you to draw this diagram. So first I'll explain it, then we will discuss it. Okay. So here, this is a vehicle taking a curve shown here. This is the curve here. Okay. And you can see here FF. You can see a component shown here, FF and FR. This is nothing but the force at the front wheel. So this is the front wheel shown here. This is the rear wheel shown here. Okay. Now, we know that when the vehicle is turning in this direction, that is, it is turning in this direction because the front of the vehicle is here. It is turning in this direction due to the curve that is shown here. So when it is turning to the left, okay, here it is in the left, these two wheels, the wheels shown here and here, that is F1 and F3 are inner wheels, while the wheels shown here, that is F2 and F4 are the outer wheels. So these are the outer wheels. So the direction of rotation or the direction of force through which the body can move is shown here. That is the F, that is the force, the direction of motion, or the side it slips, the vehicle slips is shown as F here, and that is the direction of force in which the vehicle moves. So when a force is exerted on the ground in that direction, in the direction of F, that is in the direction of the outer wheels, always there is a reaction force occurring opposite at the tires. There will be an opposite reaction force to the direction of motion of the car. So we know that this reaction force is the reason why a car, when stopped on a level ground, does not move forward or backwards because of this reaction force. So when you are starting in vehicle, we have to first overcome this reaction force in order to rotate the vehicle forward or in a reverse direction. So first you have to compensate the reaction force that is occurring. So this reaction force is shown in this direction. So the direction of motion of the car will be in this direction rather than this one. Okay, we are looking at the sideways slipping, and the sideways slipping occurs at F. Okay, and when it is moving to that F, there will be a reaction force at each of the wheels. Okay, so you can see here FF is the direction of the motion of front wheels in that direction, and FR is the force resulted by the rear wheels or the rear axle to that direction. So both the wheel axles are producing a force in that direction, and the resultant force is F, which acts at the center of gravity. So I'll tell you about center of gravity later. So for these forces, the forces FF and FR generated here, there will be sufficient reactive forces. So these reactive forces are shown here. Okay, four forces, that is F1, F2, F3 and F4. So these are the four forces that are shown here. Next, you can see an axis that goes through here. Okay, the axis that goes through here, and here we are showing RC. This is the roll center of the or the roll center axis that is provided here. So what is roll center? I have told you before, the center through which the front axle and the center of the rear axle is a center point, and it's called the roll center, and these two when connected forms an axis called the roll axis, wherein it shows the direction or the axis through which a car rotates. Okay, it is rotating on an axis. If you are taking an axis, it rotates in a circular motion across this axis. So for that, the roll axis is mentioned, and this roll axis is similar to the axis of the propeller shaft and the differential here. So it is it is almost at the center of the differential here and also at the center of the axle here. Okay, so these are the roll centers and this is the roll axis. Now if you notice here, you can see that there is a distance hf and here there is a distance hr. So while looking here itself, you can see hf is much lesser than hr here. Okay, hf is much lesser than hr here, and then you can see this is because the engine is mounted at the front. Okay, the engine is mounted at the front rather than the rear, and due to that, weight is concentrated at the front. Hence, the distance from the roll axis to the ground, this is the ground line, and to the ground axis will be much lesser when compared to HR, that is the rear wheel height from the or the rear wheel axis height from the ground. So that is what the HR and HF is. HF is the front wheel height from the ground, front wheel axis height from the ground. Okay, now next is the center of gravity. So I have already told you, center of gravity is not present at the center of the vehicle, but rather at the where the engine is present. So it will be almost equal to the front of the vehicle. It will not be here, or it will not be even at the half portion. This is not the half portion, rather this a little, this distance is much less when compared here. You can see here two distances are provided, C and D, and you can see from this diagram itself that C is much lesser than D, and the complete distance that is shown here, that is C plus D, is known as wheel base. If it is not mentioned, please write. It is wheel base here. Okay, it is called as wheel base, and the T here from one tire center to another tire of the rear or the front uh, is called as wheel track. That is small letter T. Wheel track is the distance from one center to the other center of a front wheel tire or rear wheel tires. Okay, that is the wheel track, while wheel base is nothing but the distance from a front center of the front wheel to the rear wheel when taken from both directions. If you are taking from here, this is the wheel track, sorry, wheel base here, and this is the wheel base here. So this is center of gravity. So center of gravity acts at the center point of this axis of the roll axis and the ground axis shown here. So it will act on the center, but it is not present in, at the center of the vehicle, but closer to the front of the vehicle. It is closer, not in the front, but closer to the front of the vehicle. Okay, now resultant force F is acting in this direction. Okay, resultant force F is acting in this direction. And when I have shown you the video of a body going under roll, I told you there is a weight shift in the direction of rolling. There is a weight shift occurring, and due to that weight shift, the suspension gets compressed and the inner wheel gets lighter. And due to this weight shift, the center of gravity also shifts, because the weight always acts through the center of gravity. So the resultant weight of the body always acts through the center of gravity, and due to the weight shift, and this weight shift occurs due to the change of or the change of center of gravity. So the center of gravity is extended to this direction because of the resultant force generated, and through this center of gravity only the weight acts downwards. Okay, that is how the weight acts downwards, and then the roll axis and all is there, that I will explain. So I'll give you 5 minutes and you can draw this diagram. Okay. Please draw this also, okay? You have to draw this also. You don't have to draw it in this manner. You just have to show a point here, okay? Just a point here. You don't have to draw it in this manner, but you have to draw a point here and then denote this W that is shown here, okay? W shown here. Okay, please note this distance also. Okay, there is one distance here, A and B, and A is the distance from the center of gravity to the roll axis. Okay, A is the distance from center of gravity to the roll axis, while B is the distance from the roll axis to the ground axis. So this is the ground axis you can show here, and that is B. Okay. Please write what are these terms. Okay, C, D, T, A, B. You can write respective what are those. Then F1, F2, F3, and F4 are the reaction force occurring at various points. So F1 and F2 are reaction forces occurring at the front wheels, while F3 and F4 are reaction forces that is occurring at the rear wheels. Okay, please mention that. So did you guys draw it? Did you draw it? Hello? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Would anyone respond? Did you guys draw it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So to explain this, so we are going to learn various couples and etc. for different uh, body roll. So first we are going to study about body roll couple. So what is a couple basically? Couple is nothing but, so if you are looking at the moment, so we have all studied what is moment. So you have studied a subject, strength of materials and all, and you have studied about bending moment and moment, but basically what is moment and all. So if you are stating moment, it is actually the force and perpendicular distance. It is the force and its perpendicular distance. So if you are drawing a force can be a weight or a force in the manner of F. If we are drawing a force in this direction, the moment that is formed is in its perpendicular direction. So what is the moment actually? A moment is nothing but force into perpendicular distance, and this moment is responsible for forming a rotation. So if you are looking at this one, We are looking at this one, and you are fixing this point that is shown here, x as the point here. You are fixing it that way. This, based on this w, this can rotate in this direction. So you can see an arrow shown here. This can rotate in this direction. So a moment assists in the forming of a couple. So a couple is nothing but a formation of this rotational motion. A couple is formed. Okay, and here the couple is formed in the direction of rotation. So there are two types of rotation here. There is a roll center. If the vehicles can roll in this direction or in this direction, or either to the left or to the right. Okay, that is what is shown as in RC. That is the roll centers. So at RC, the roll centers are mentioned, and you can see the moment that is formed here. So the moment is formed is W into X. So I will tell you how it is formed. So it is nothing but the force into its perpendicular distance. So this distance was x. So W into x will be the moment form. And this moment, when we are rotating, if we are fixing the point that is shown here, and then we are rotating it, it forms a rotational motion, and that is known as the couple. Okay, that is known as the couple. So that is what is shown here. Okay, couple is formed by rotation, that is termed as M here, and this is how the couple is formed. So the rotation here that occurs is that body roll that occurs is in the direction of M, that is shown here. Okay, that is what is known as body roll. So I will wind up the class today, and we will discuss the rest of this session in the next class. So the book that you have used for drawing this diagram, please bring it on the next class so that we can discuss the various role aspects in the next class. Okay, thank you. Next I will take the attendance.